What's going on, everybody? My name is Billy the Squid, and I am going to do something a little different today. We are bringing in an outside source, somebody that I value's opinion on the Souls-like genre. My very own blood, my cousin Brandon. How you doing today?
What's up, everybody?
So we have both extensively played through Elden Ring, and this is kind of going to be our pseudo review and breakdown of what we like, what we don't like about Elden Ring, and really how it's compared to the past From Software games. So let's uh let's jump right in, shall we? How you doing today?
And not too shabby yourself.
I'm good. So Elden Ring.
First thoughts? It's the best. It's the best of the best. It takes good things from every Souls like I think, and just puts them all together in a nice big open world. Tons of bosses, tons of content, tons of room for a nice DLC or two. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm
you
I'm
really can't
excited
go
about the
wrong.
DLC. There's already people theory crafting about the DLCs, and I think they're gonna have a really good time with it. And I do agree with you. I think Bl- uh, Elden Ring really does like it takes everything from the Souls games to Bloodborne to Sekiro. It really is like a meld of all of the things that worked in those games and only a little bit of what didn't. And I think that's just based on like the From Software formula. They are set in their ways in some things for better and for worse. And we'll kind of
I
break
agree.
we'll break into some of that stuff as we go along. But we've
I
both
absolutely
completed.
agree. I
We
think
both.
this is the PS5 game that everybody's been waiting for. In all
Yeah,
honesty,
yeah, and it definitely excels on the consoles. The PC port, at least the PC port's stable now from the solo player perspective, but the PC port from Software's never been great at their PC ports, and honestly, um, I do think it's most well optimized for the PlayStation 5. Um, it might just be because I don't know anybody that owns an Xbox and's playing it on that, but
people still buy Xboxes.
uh, I had just assumed everybody got Game Pass and played Xbox games on PC, but that was just that. Maybe that's just me. But let's break into it. So, starting right out of the gate, we have how many starter classes are there? 8, 10, 10, 10 starter classes. Um, and it's your standard mix and match of starter classes. Some pretty familiar. Some I feel like there's a little bit too much overlap between. Um, so to break it down, you have the Wretch, which is your level 1 class. You have the Vagabond, which is your heavy tank. The Warrior's kind of your jack of all trades starter, maybe a little bit high in dex, but it's pretty well rounded altogether. You got two magic classes. One's pure magic and one's magic dex with the Prisoner and Astrologer.
Right.
Um, you got two faith based classes, the Confessor and the Prophet. The Samurai's just kind of doing its own thing, honestly.
I mean, Samurai's OP. Looking back, I think I would have started Samurai. I mean, Astrologer is what I chose to begin with, but I think that Samurai is definitely a good choice as well, especially for my playstyle. I was a little surprised that they went with two separate faith build characters. I mean, I think that traditionally a lot of the faith-based characters in a lot of Souls games have not been played as much, and I think that this game really brings that chance to light for all these people to try that faith build, because there are a lot more things for people to use those spells and such in this game as opposed to the other ones in the series.
Yeah, I agree. And they're actually pretty accessible. The open world makes things accessible in general, but as soon as you hit the round table, there's a miracle vendor there, and it opens up that line of playstyle really quickly. But yeah, I was surprised too that there was two different faith based characters. The Confessor's more of a melee like faith. He doesn't really use it, he's just got the heal, but he does have a high faith stat. The Prophet actually comes with like a fire spell as well as a heal. So it's interesting that they went those routes with it. Same thing with the double mage, but I guess it makes a little bit more sense in that regard.
Yeah, I think
Having
as I think as the Souls genre goes on, they've made things more accessible. As they gain popularity and more people play, I think that those inaccessible things in games kind of turn people away. So they've kind of made everything readily acceptable, accessible rather, and I think that's a good thing for sure.
For sure. And nothing says that better. I started with the Wretch myself, and accessibility is the name of the game. This is easily the game I would recommend a level one start more than any other game, just because even starting off with the Wretch, just a club, no armor and stuff, it's very easy to get like value out of like anything that you pick up, and it's easy to find stuff to like get started, and it gives more value to that loot that you would pick up. So I think
Right,
Elden
I'd agree
Ring
with that as well.
I think Elden Ring did a great job. And like you said, it's all much more accessible no matter what you pick. Um, you can find and you will find stuff that'll supplement it.
Yeah, there's really not a bad choice. Um, you know, Realistically, there's no bad choice in any Souls game as far as a character, unless you're going to do like like in Bloodborne, a level 4 run, or I think there was a level 12 or 8 or something that was even weaker if you decided not to level up. I forget what it
Yeah,
was in
because
Bloodborne.
I think it was a level 10 or 12. It was the one that had like really high blood tinge and like nothing else.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah,
So
and I think that's all kind of tied into the open world concept that they brought forward. As open as Dark Souls 1 was, I feel like it and Dark Souls 2 were probably the most open of the Souls games. They have definitely narrowed down their scope into a more linear stylings with Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Dark Souls 3. And it's
mhm.
it's nice to see a massive return to form in uh progression variability.
Yeah, and this game definitely shines in that area. There's you can go any direction. There's very few bosses that are even required to finish the game.
Yeah.
So and another good thing is it's not exactly easy to miss a lot of the content. Like it's kind of like right there, and it's like, hey, you can come and enjoy this if you'd like, but if not, go on over there if you think you'd have more fun. So
Exactly. And it's I feel like the leveling, pacing and stuff, while there is a bunch of like content to do, there's like a ton of dungeons that you can get into in Limgrave. It doesn't really like punish you for not doing that content if you're comfortable enough to go like directly into some of the mainline dungeons. But it also doesn't seem to over level you too much if you do decide to like hit up that content early.
I'd
Because
agree with that.
I grinded out Limgrave super hard on my first playthrough and still got a decent amount of challenge from the first two legacy dungeons. Stormvale Castle, I might have been a little bit over leveled for, but once I got to the academy, uh, I felt like I was settled back in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think that there's not really an area that really over levels you unless you happen to stumble into an in-game area and fight one of the super bosses, if you will, because that's something that I did before I finished the game. I ended up fighting all those super bosses, and I'm like, why did I just get 6 levels off this boss?
Yeah,
So
it's easy to do that, but it's also easy once you recognize that, oh shit, maybe not here, not now. The instant ability to be able to teleport, the horseback combat, basically being on horseback, anything in the open world you can run away from. I don't think, other than maybe the rune bears, I don't think there's anything that can actually catch you. So it really gives you the ability to engage when you want to, disengage when you don't want to. And if you stumble somewhere you don't like, you can't be, find somewhere else.
yeah, I unfortunately have that problem where if I start an area, I see it as a challenge. I have to finish it, and that's like right before I got to the academy. Somehow I found myself in Volcano Manor, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to do this, and then next thing you know, I was fighting the big snake boss at like level 40, and it's like, bro, you need to cool down and go do some other content before you come here because like every move that big snake did was literally one shotting me, and I was like, maybe I need to put some you know vigor in before I do this.
Speaking of which, that is one of the things I think this game and people coming into this game I've noticed struggling with the most. And I've tried to do some jolly cooperation and stuff like that. And it seems like I don't know if people just aren't recognizing that it's that essential in this game, or if I don't understand it, but it seems like everybody's getting one shot. Nobody's really valuing the vigor stat too much. And it's probably more important in this game than any of the other ones. I can't think of any of the other games that had as many like potential one shots as this game did if you didn't like, cuz coming from a Dark Souls 3 perspective, you and I both are fairly proficient at that game. We can go through that whole game and probably never put a point into health at all and be 100% fine. Even if we took a few hits, it's not going to kill us. This game
Yeah, I
about
think
about the halfway point, you're in trouble if you do that route. You can't really glass cannon it.
yeah, and that's the route I took. I started out as a magic user, and I was level 50 or 60, and everything was one shotting me because I literally put no points into health. And I think that one of the reasons that the health thing's so important and every stat is because the soft caps are so much softer in this game than any other Souls
And they're
like by
tall.
far.
And they're higher too. Like I think the weapon damage is like the hardest of the soft caps, I guess, is 80. It's like 40, 60, and 80 are
Hmm.
the caps for damage. And health goes all the way up to 60 before it starts dropping off. So
That's something that I had to learn the hard way, unfortunately.
yeah, because a lot of the bosses, like even like I was saying, mid game bosses, the damage numbers get turned up very quickly, and I feel like it all kind of funnels into they overtuned the bosses, but they also gave you the ability to overtune yourselves. It more so this game than the other games. They really wanted you to hit a power fantasy, whereas the other games it was more of a rising from the dirt, like to circumvent challenges. This one they wanted you to become the challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think that kind of ties into the whole open world. Like, this is really a be the exact character you want to be. Whereas, like you said, not just in gameplay and areas in the game with the other Souls likes, like everything in this one is open, whereas a lot of things in that one was linear.
Yeah. And there's not really any walls that you're going to hit. So I guess that's part of the experience is hitting a wall and then trying to figure out a way of getting around it or getting through it, whether it's leveling up health or going somewhere else and then coming back. But
Yeah,
speaking
and
of
also
the, go ahead.
I was gonna say, they also don't want people to stumble on these areas that are meant to be very difficult and be like, why is this so easy? Like, there's never been a time in Elden Ring that I stumbled upon an area and I was like, this is too easy.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll
even
agree
when
with
I
that.
went to even when I went to the Lake of Rot, and which was I did that in Endgame. That was the only, I guess, pseudo secret area that I found after I had, beat the final boss. And even then, like, I wasn't severely overtuned for that area, even after finishing the game. So I think they scaled the game very well.
I will agree with that. So let's dive more into the specifics of the open world because given that it is an open world, a lot of problems open world games have is lack of variability both in boss design or enemy design in general and environments. And I know you're like that's one of the things you critique games on the most is if environments are too samey, you disengage from the game. How did you feel about Elden Ring and its level variety?
I will say that it does seem a lot better than a lot of other Souls likes in that aspect. There's a lot of variability. And it has all the great places that a typical Souls like does have. It has a poison swamp ish area. It has the mountain area. It has it all.
Yeah.
And the boss design was great. And even though, like, how many unique bosses are there? Like,
It's around 70 unique bosses put into over, I think it was 170 encounters.
right. And I there were some times when I stumbled upon a dungeon, like it just like a random dungeon that I was overpowered for, and I went in and one shot the boss. But I didn't ever think that this is a problem. I never got that feeling. And I think there's enough content. And I think they kind of built on the whole chalice dungeon aspect that Bloodborne had, and vastly improved it.
Yeah, I 100% guarantee that. Um, just based on the fact that with the Bloodborne Chalice dungeons, yes, each like cell was handcrafted, but given that it was all procedurally generated, those pieces needed to be able to fit together. This one, while the environments were samey because you had your catacombs, you had your cave, you had your hero dungeons, they still were able to handcraft them to a point where each one, while aesthetically similar, the layouts, the enemies that are set up in them, and even some of the bosses for the most part, they had their own identity.
Yeah, I thought the bosses were great. My only boss critique, and you and I spoke about this previously, is that I thought, with the whole with the genre, and with even with the name like Elden Ring, like I thought there's going to be a dragon in this game that is so epic that it's going to blow me away. And while there are some good dragon fights, that amazing dragon boss battle just does not exist. There's no giant, humongous dragon that tops Midir in this game, and that was one of my only boss disappointments. I
I
will have
think
to say.
I think I narrowed that down as to why that's disappointed you, and I think it comes in twofold. One, I think there's an oversaturation of dragons in the game in general. Um, the lesser dragons themselves are fairly copy pasted versions of one another. One will do rot, one will do frost, one will do magic breath, but they all have very similar move sets as far as the base dragons go.
Right.
Um, and I honestly feel like if they would have put a larger like main boss dragon in somewhere like the frozen lake and gave it that giant area to fight in and then actually utilize that space, because I think that's something that the Midir fight in Dark Souls 3 did better than any other dragon fight that From has previously done, and dare I say any fight that is in Elden Ring with the dragon, is the dragon fight itself utilized the space perfectly. It was a very large arena with a very large boss, but it never felt like there was too much space. I never felt like I had to run towards the boss forever because it was running away from me all the time, but I also didn't get frustrated because it was so close range. I feel like the two big dragon fights that they have, the lightning dragon and the lich dragon,
Hmm.
while both very good bosses, they're too stationary. I feel like they're more, I guess, mage dragons than like what Madeir is with a good back
Well,
and forth
Midir's a
between.
good balance.
Yeah, because Madeir has melee attacks, Madeir has fire attacks, and then in phase two, Madeir was casting dark magic at you as well as the giant laser beam of doom.
Right. Yeah. And I felt very similar. The only I feel like the Lich Dragon was a little bit too easy. And I forget the name of the dragon that's in the
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 golden dragon
crumbling.
with the lightning, yeah.
Yeah, the one that's in the place with the big tornadoes.
Right.
I thought that was a good boss, but it really just kind of felt like a one trick pony, and it just wasn't epic. It was good. I won't say, because I don't think that there's a poor boss in Elden Ring, really, other than maybe the little cat thing with the sword. That
You don't like the Erd Tree watchdogs?
no, the little Balrog or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I thought that those were probably the only stupid boss in the game, and even then, like it wasn't that bad,
No,
and they introduced one of those to you like right out of the gate, like that. That could have been the first boss that you fought
it was the first boss that I fought.
if you found the rider to be too difficult, then yeah, you would, which a lot of people did.
Yeah.
You would stumble upon that little dungeon, and find that boss and think, this isn't so bad. It's a nice intro to the game, and yeah, it's pretty easy to beat, and it's a good building block, and it's a good way to kind of get your bearings in Elden Ring. So
I agree. Um, Back to the dragons, the second, like I guess a tertiary point.
mhm.
And this is something that I think a few of the bosses have. That's a problem. Is the bosses are too big in some circumstances, and while you're fighting them, it just feels like you're fighting a leg, and whatever's going on is off screen just because the boss is so big you can't like have the point that you're attacking in focus and still see what the boss is doing. And I feel
Right,
like
and
Midir did that very well by making its head its like primary weak point. It kept you in front of the boss so that you could see what the boss was doing at all times instead of just running up and smacking a leg over and over. And since those bosses weren't very mobile, it also reinforced that kind of a play style.
right, and I think, one thing I will say is that this is, there's 3 Dark Souls games, there's Bloodborne, there's a number of Souls-like games. For them to have so many unique bosses in this game, and so many good unique bosses, is very impressive considering the amount of bosses that there's already been released, because they don't want people saying, "Oh, that's just a copy of that boss," or "This is just a copy of this." They've really come out with something novel despite there being so much saturation already, and that's one reason why I really liked Elden Ring, is because there's not a lot of that in video games nowadays. Everything's a remake. Everything's a Square Enix remake cash grab style game.
Right.
And this one was just something From Software said, "Hey, we're coming out with a new one. It's called Elden Ring. We got George R. R. Martin on board. It's going to be badass. You're all going to like it." And everyone was like, "Fuck yeah!" And I mean, I had my doubts at times. I'm like, is this going to be as good as they say? But they really delivered, and that was one thing that I really liked.
It's one of the few games in the present day that came out working from launch, unless you were on the PC version. The console versions were pretty much good to go right out of the gate, and that's something you don't get to say very much these days. I mean, back in the PS2 era, you bought a game and it just worked. That is a rare thing these days. So just for them to have
Mhm.
that alone is a
Cyberpunk cough.
yeah, is a big check mark. Plus them actually being able to deliver like the majority of the hype. I do think that any game this day is overhyped. I think Elden Ring came as close as it possibly could have to riding that hype to its logical conclusion.
Right, I'd agree with that as well.
So back to the bosses. There's roughly 70 unique bosses in the game, and that makes up 170 roughly boss fights throughout the game. And this is mix and matching repeat bosses, as well as the more mainstream legacy bosses and stuff along those lines. A lot of people were frustrated. This is one of the frustration points that I've heard from several people is that it's too they would have rather had them have less bosses, like less boss fights in general, but have them be more polished, I guess. Less boss fights in general, but more unique encounters instead of, like you said, you got the dog one, and then you have two of the dogs, and then you have three of the dogs. Like, I think the most common boss in the game is the Knight Cavalry bosses, which are the knight horseback riders.
Right.
There's 9 of them throughout the game. There's
Hmm.
probably 6 or 7 of the ulcerated tree spirits, like the little snake, uh, the snake tree worm things.
Hmm.
There's probably about that many of like the Erd tree avatars. And while
Yeah.
they are like reskins of bosses, I do think that at least for these solo encounters, they did enough between each variation that they kind of built upon each other. At least if you like fought them in the progression that the game kind of intended you to. Because the first time you fight
Hmm.
an Erdtree avatar, it's just going to smack you around with its stick. The second time, it's going to do that big ground slam, and then the light beams are going to come at you. And then the third time or fourth time, whenever it does the butt slam, it's going to spew poison everywhere. It's a nice build from one to another
Yeah.
to kind of keep you on your toes so it doesn't feel as samey, even though it is kind of the same thing.
Yeah. See, I kind of feel the opposite. What a lot of these people are saying, because there are a lot of unique encounters and a lot of great, like, how many bosses, like when you do the all remembrances, there's what, 15.
15 mainline bosses, and that's not counting most of those bosses have a mid boss that is also unique in front of them.
Yeah, I think that people are going to complain no matter what. And not if you have 170 bosses, with 70 unique bosses, like not every one of them is going to be amazing. Like if they want a game like that, that game does not exist. Every
No,
boss is not amazing in any of the From Software games. There's more good bosses in this game probably than all the other Souls games combined, in my opinion, at least.
I'm liable to agree with that. I would say so.
We could probably sit down and count them up and hash through them. That's a conversation for another time. But and those are the kind of conversations we like to have. But I really do think that there's a lot of great content, and people do tend to whine when not every piece of content in a game is exactly what they want.
Yeah. I I do agree with what you're saying, and a lot of people were drawing like comparisons to Dark Souls 2. A lot of the reason people don't like Dark Souls 2 as much as the other games was because Dark Souls 2 did have a penchant for recycling bosses.
Hmm.
Um, but looking back on it, there's not really a out of the Dark Souls games specifically, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, they all recycle. They all recycle bosses. There's like 3 Asylum demons in Dark Souls 1. The Taurus and Cabra demon become regular enemies later. So,
Well, my feelings about Dark Souls too. Um, but what I will say, this may be a criticism and a praise at the same time, but because I love watching people play Dark Souls 2, but I hate playing it.
right.
And I think that that's because it's a great game in theory, and they had a great idea with Dark Souls 2, and there's a ton of content. It's just not fun to play for everyone. And I think what they did with Elden Ring is made that interesting content, that game that looks amazing, but it also plays amazing too.
100%. How much do you think the jump button added to the game?
Oh my god. Like how did they not have a jump button before? That's what I want to know. I who
How
after
did it take them 5 or 4 games to put a jump button in?
Yeah, they're sitting at their board meeting and some guy goes, what we might do is put in a jump button. And they're all going, holy crap. And it's like, that's shit we've been saying since Dark Souls 1. Like, why the hell can't you jump in this game?
It's interesting, and it's actually 5 games, if because Demon Souls is a game that exists.
Uh, don't mention Demon Souls to me.
Um, but do you think that if they would have had a jump button in those games, that it would have like? Do you think? Because I know what a lot of people think. A lot of people think that the Souls games are only hard because they gimp you on your control of your character through not having a jump button, limiting movement, and stuff like that. Do you think having a jump button in those prior titles, like with the AI design the way it is, would have, I don't want to say made the game too easy, but yeah,
Yeah,
actually I do.
I
Actually
get
I
what
do. Do you think it would have made the game too easy?
I get what you're saying. I do think it probably would have, and I think that they could have implemented a jump button somewhere around Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3. Because, part of the draw of Dark Souls 1 was it was like a shitty hard game. Like the game like all things considered, it's kind of shit, but it's just good enough and it's just challenging enough that it makes you want to like be like, "Ha, game, I beat your ass." It's
No,
it's
I
it,
100% agree. I've been very vocal on my opinion that Dark Souls 1 is my least favorite of the games, not out of like the game's overall design. I just don't enjoy playing it because the like the games that came after made it feel horrible to go back and try to play.
See, that's something that I found out the hard way as well because when they did the Dark Souls 1 remake, I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to play this game again." Because you and I, played that together when we were younger, we were kids, and we had such a good time when we finally, you know, got OP and shit on that game in its entirety.
Yeah.
And I really was looking forward to going back and playing it. And I popped it in and I started playing it, and I'm like, wow, this game sucks. Like, I and
I think that's a good testament to From Software moving forward with their game design though. You know a sequel is good when it makes the prior games feel inferior in every way. I think the only thing Dark Souls 1 does, like, and it still stands the test of time, is it does have the best world. Its world design is bar none the best, with Elden Ring creeping into that spotlight just because of the open world nature of it. But given the resources that they had, Dark Souls 1's world is amazing.
I would agree. And there's a lot of variation in Dark Souls 1. Like Dark Souls 1's a really big game, especially with the DLCs.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a great game.
yeah. But
It's
bringing it
just
back, bringing it
yeah,
back into Elden Ring.
oh, for sure. We could, we, you and I like to go on tangents, and we could talk about the other Souls games, indefinitely. But I definitely agree with what you're saying about Dark Souls 1 for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you that it feels weird that Sekiro is the first game to implement the jump button, and I'm glad that they brought it into the Souls formula because Sekiro is a great game. I wouldn't consider it a Souls game, but it's a very good game. I've enjoyed it significantly, and I'm happy. Like we were saying at the start of this conversation, it's brought everything that From Software has done into a solid package
Hmm.
and just improved upon it.
Yeah, it's definitely a culmination of everything that From Software has put out. It's mostly good.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of the bad. And that's one thing that signifies a really good game designer is when they learn from their mistakes, because that's something that Blizzard has failed to do with World of Warcraft, and I feel like that's one reason why that game has like slowly died. Like that game has like the slowest death of any game I've ever loved in my life, but it's has just slowly died, and they had probably the most loyal fan base of any game, and it's slowly whittled everybody down to nothing.
yeah, absolutely. So, for the second half of this conversation, something that we love to go into probably too much detail on. We've brought up how many bosses there are. We've brought up that we are okay with the bosses being replicated in a way, but because there are so many bosses, um, it's okay for them to have replicated them in the ways that they did over 170 encounters. Let's bring it down to the mainline encounters and talk boss design. How do you feel about the boss design in Elden Ring, starting from the get go, and we'll kind of work our way towards the in game style content. So, right out of the gate, From Software loves putting that one OP enemy right in your face from the get go of a video game. Usually it's not in the form of a boss, but the Tree Sentinel roaming right around right outside of the spawn point. Do you think it's a good introduction to the game? Do you think it's maybe too much, or do you think that it is too much in a good way?
Mm, I don't think it's in a bad way because I mean, also it is a open world, so it leaves it open to you being able to cheese it if
Yeah,
you really don't want to fight it legit. It's definitely a hard boss right out of the gate. It's much harder than any out of the gate boss that any Souls like has to offer.
yeah. I think the closest thing is Gundyr, and the Tree Sentinel puts Gundyr to shame in that regard. The only thing Gundyr has going for him in that instance is he's mandatory. Tree Sentinel's not.
Right. In I didn't find Gundyr hard at all. And I may have even beat Gundyr without dying. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you and I played Dark Souls 3 together. And I don't remember us having any trouble on any boss until the dancer, I think.
Yeah,
And
I think Dancer was for me personally. I struggled a bit with Pontiff, but Pontiff and then Dancer specifically.
right. And that actually, I started with one class, and that's why I decided to switch classes because I played it a couple times. I'm like, this thing's beating my ass. Like I need to pick something else. And that's why I chose to go with the magic class, and then ended up with the a spell sword type type class that's so popular right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it's a good boss, and I think it's great that it's optional, and because you can go power up a little bit, come back and then fight it again, and it's got a nice move set. It hits hard, but it doesn't completely truck you. It has some one shots if you haven't leveled up any. It's overall it's a good encounter.
I agree. The thing I think it does better than anything is it kind of encompasses what From Software wants from the experience of Elden Ring. They are teaching the players right from the get go that it's okay to take an L in this game. And what they want you to do is recognize when you're taking an L and then go use the open world that they've given you to come back and get revenge.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
So then moving on from the Tree Sentinel, we don't need to worry about a lot of the dungeon bosses because most of them, while still very good, they don't hold a candle to the legacy dungeon bosses. For the first mandatory boss of the game, Morgot the Fell Omen. This may be, if people just rush past the Tree Sentinel and are gunning it straight for Stormveil, this could potentially be their first boss of the game.
Yeah, and it's a great boss. Um, it's difficult, but it's not overly difficult. But if you haven't leveled up much and it's your first boss of the game, you're going to struggle with this boss.
Yeah,
It's got a nice variation between, it's got a little bit of magic. It's not super aggro, so it allows you to heal a little bit if you get hit. The boss arena is not small. It's got some good environment. You also have the issue of falling off. I
yeah,
think I think it really gives you that dose of what the game's going to be like, and it kind of gets your feet wet in a hurry. It
yeah.
doesn't just get your feet wet. It's like jumping into the pool. Maybe not the deep end, but it's definitely they don't hold your hand in that boss. And I really liked it. And I was like, if this is what's to come in the rest of this game, then this game's going to be really good. And I wasn't disappointed, obviously.
Yeah. If you skip the Tree Sentinel and maybe ignore, maybe you got a few wins in the smaller dungeons coming up to that point. I still think Margot's going to be a potential wall for some players. Looking at early game bosses from the prior games, none of them really hold a candle. Like Morgot doesn't hit super hard. Morgot won't one shot you. He won't even two shot you.
I don't know if I'd say that. My little mage that I was coming in there with, I do remember getting two shot
Yeah.
once or twice before I finally shot enough pebbles at him to win.
Maybe once the hammer comes out, but I feel like the move set that Morgot has and what most of the main line bosses of the game have, what they could have just brute force numbers onto people and like damage wore people down, or just did like a few specific moves that are just really, really hard to dodge. The variation is, I think, one of the most impressive things with the Elden Ring boss design is that the AI, it's the most adaptive AI that I've seen. Like they've always had the AI where if you are healing within a certain range, they'll use a gap closer on you and stop your heal. But this one actually takes your positioning into account mid combo to determine how the boss is going to finish out its combo, whether it's going to do a close range attack or whether it notices you're backing up, so it's going to gap close on you mid combo or use a ranged attack mid combo.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree. And I think that it was like a good like display of the different moves that you're going to see. If you've never played a From Software game, then you aren't accustomed to the the delayed hit
Oh man.
moveset.
Dark Souls
Yeah.
2 started it, and it's a trend that has never stopped where the enemy just holds its axe above its head and you're just
Yeah.
standing there like looking at it, waiting.
Yeah, and you've already rolled 3 times and you're like, "When is this coming?" And then all of a sudden it just smashes you and it one shots you and you're like, "Damn it."
Yeah.
So,
The the
he-
delayed
I thought Margit was a great boss, and I don't think that I've honestly been disappointed with a first boss in a From Software game. You've got the Asylum Demon, which is not the best boss in the world, but it's not bad.
No, for that
Um,
for the limitations of that game, it and especially whenever it introduces itself before you've gotten your weapon. I think that's the
right.
cool thing about that one is you walk into the big open area, it jumps down, you don't have a weapon yet, so you're like, "Oh shit, do I bare fist fight it?" And then you try and it's like, "Oh, this is going to take for fucking ever." And then you notice the
Hmm.
door that's open.
Right. And you've got the giant in Dark Souls 2, which wasn't
Right.
bad. You've got Gundyr in Dark Souls 3. You've got Father G
Or the
yeah,
cleric
I would
beast.
or the
I would
cleric.
say Cleric Beast is optional. Father G is the true first boss.
Yeah, so that was a great first boss. So, From Software has traditionally had great first bosses, and I think that they've continued that trend with Margit for sure.
For sure. Moving on into the castle, the first Elden Lord that we fight is Godric, and I'm of the mindset that Godric is easier than Morgot. That's my opinion. I well, okay, so my first time playing through, I did a like quality based build. I started with the Bloodhound Fang, and then I eventually moved into a bleed build near endgame. But I was using the Bloodhound Fang off the beginning. It has very high stagger. It's a very mobile weapon. I one shot both of the. Well, no, I didn't one shot. Uh, I one shot Margit. I did not one shot Godric, but I haven't died to Godric since that first encounter.
See, that's the thing about Godric is, and this is one reason why I think he's a good boss, is because it's a boss that you need to learn. You had a good build when you played it first. So maybe it didn't take you a while, but I think it took a lot of players a while to learn the move set and such. And once you have it down, it's an easy boss. But it's that traditional fun From Software boss that is hard, but and it gives you that sense of satisfaction once you figure out the move sets, and all that stuff and how to dodge it, and it's that learning curve, that experience that, and that sense of accomplishment that you get from, being able to beat the boss, rather easily after you finally learned it, that really makes the players enjoy a game. So that's definitely how I
Yeah,
felt after, playing Godric, a couple times, because I didn't, unfortunately, didn't one shot either of those bosses. But I think that I think they're both great, and I don't know if one for me is better than the other. I don't think that they're S tier, what I would consider an S tier boss, but for me, they're definitely A tier, both of
yeah,
them.
for sure. One thing that was concerning me with Godric, whenever I first played it, and I voiced this frustration on stream whenever I was first fighting him, is there's one move that he does anytime that you get overly aggressive with him, and he'll start spinning up the tornado around him. It comes out instantly. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it shuts down the momentum of the fight, where it turned it into very much a hit and run style fight. I wasn't able to stay up close on him and continue to combo because anytime I tried to, he did that. And maybe that's smart boss design. Maybe that boss is never intended to be a boss. And I'm starting, like, after I finished the game, I'm happy to say that not a lot of bosses followed that suit, but it was a concern of mine whenever I was first fighting him, because I was like, shit, if they're just gonna have me hit the boss once and then run away, why am I gonna play a dex build that's gonna thrive off combos? How am I supposed to combo anything?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons, that that was done, I don't think that From wanted people to be able to just come in there and, essentially man him down. And, they've done that, kind of put a roadblock boss in quite a few games like that, because the more you're stuck on something, the more you're going to play the game.
Yeah,
And, also, most From Software games, especially if you haven't played one before, it's a pretty steep learning curve.
it is.
And once you learn, like, even if you know how the games go, these games always fall off in difficulty in the late game. Like, you always become more overpowered than the game can handle. And
That's in part due to the leveling, and also in part due to you just the click moment.
yeah. So, they like that the beginning of the game to be difficult. And that's how every single game in the series, I feel like was.
Yeah. Moving on into the academy, a boss that you saw me firsthand struggling with for the exact reason we were talking about with the delayed swings, Red Wolf of Radon. That's the mid boss of the academy, and it's a piece of wet tissue paper as far as its health pool goes. But I just could not wrap my mind around the delayed double swings whenever it summoned the sword.
I mean, I like the boss. It's it kind of was like a tip of the hat to the
Sif.
wolf, Sif the wolf in Dark Souls 1, which I don't think it was as good as Sif, because that one, I thought Sif was harder, and it was just a better experience for me. But it was still an overall a pretty decent boss. You know,
Yeah,
um,
I,
I wasn't disappointed in it in any way, and it was good. It used magic,
the magic
and
really surprised me. I wasn't expecting a wolf boss to like do the spell sword summons and stuff like that. That kind of caught me off guard.
I thought it was pretty cool. And that is a boss that they repeated a couple times,
It is.
and there's definitely a couple harder versions of that boss, which were really good as well, in my opinion. I think one of them's in one of the hero graves, and it's a very long, you know, drawn out dungeon, and then you have to fight that boss too, and it was good.
Hell yeah. And then Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. Um, the I'm looking through the list. She's one of like three mage based bosses. I don't know if you would consider the dragons like mage based, but most of the bosses are fairly melee based, with a few of them having like dual melee and range. She's all range all the time, and I was very impressed. Usually, mage bosses in From Software games are a bit frustrating. Um, Looking at you, Crystal Sage, maybe that's just because of my color blindness and I couldn't tell blue from purple. But the clones just spamming spells everywhere, it was too much. It was a an unfun way to do a mage boss. I feel like her having a more direct, like you have a direct focus that you need to prioritize, and the spells themselves are challenging enough for you to work around. Plus, she's constantly kiting back away from you as mages do. Um, what did you think about her?
I thought she was a good boss and a great idea. I thought
Oh, we didn't even touch on the phase one gimmick.
I think the phase one gimmick added a little bit to the fight. I'm glad that it wasn't just another like a phase one similar to phase two. I thought that phase one definitely added something to the fight. However, my only criticism on phase two is that I feel like, and it's like this for a lot of bosses in Elden Ring, is that the AI is built in a way that if RNG is on your side, then the boss is a significantly easier version than what you get sometimes. Like sometimes you get an AI that I feel is so difficult that it's almost unbeatable. But sometimes you get, that when RNG is on your side, you get a very easy version of a boss. And
I agree, and I think what we were talking about with Margit and Godric comes into play in that when you have bosses that have so much attack variation, the AI isn't always like there's obviously going to be stronger moves and weaker moves in a boss's move set. And I feel like
right,
with a smaller move pool, you can really focus in on making sure each one of those is a slapper. Whereas with the expanded move pool that the Elden Ring bosses have, not all of them are going to be hits, not all of them are going to be wimpy, but that added variability makes it so that yeah, you could get a boss that just does wimpy shit.
yeah, I mean, and that's I think that's what a lot of players may run into is that a lot of your less skilled players may just have to run into a version of the boss that doesn't do some of the moves that are really difficult to dodge very often.
Or doesn't get a dragon summoned on them.
Yeah, that's something like I didn't need too many attempts for that boss, but I remember one of the very first times I got to phase two, I was shitting on her really bad, and then she like summoned the dragon first thing, and I don't know if there's some rhyme or reason behind what she summons. Like if you get her to a certain percent, if she, summons this, or if it's, this percent, she summons something else. But she like summoned the dragon and then started doing like one thing I have noticed in Elden Ring. It seems like when I'm doing really well against the boss, that they seem to really pull out the big guns, and they're like, "Well, if you're gonna, pull out the big guns on me, then I'm gonna do the same on you." And then I end up getting shit on by their, 2% move set rather than the things that they do, their common move sets when, it doesn't seem like I'm doing as well.
Right. I feel that. I feel that. And like you said, it's the bosses in this game more so than any of the other ones are more RNG based. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing just because of the amount of variability in the move sets, but it is definitely noticeable.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if that's actually anything other than me having bad luck. If that's actually working as intended, that it does do more difficult moves if you're doing well against the boss.
That'd
But
be an interesting thing to look into the AI code about.
yeah, that's what that's what I felt like happened to me. But I have the worst RNG of anybody in history, so
Right.
you never know.
Um Moving on to Radon. You and I both beat him pre-nerf back when his melee hitboxes were the size of the fucking planet.
Hmm.
What did you think of old Radon?
I thought it was a great idea. I don't know that it was executed perfect, but I really liked that raid style boss, and I thought it was the right amount of like you summon 5 or so odd other companions to fight Radon if you choose to. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's if you go to phase 2, I think there's more companions that can be summoned, but I don't know the
And also
exact numbers.
when they die off, you can resummon them too.
Right. And I think it was the right amount because, like say if you summon your mimic or whatever, your mimic can literally just sit there and beat on a boss and you'll never take aggro unless you like really lay into it. Whereas Radon felt like you could let your little minions, the guys you summon fight him a little bit, but if you start laying into him, then he turns the aggro to you, and that's something that I thought was good. Um,
Yeah. This
some of his
also, for my playthrough, I didn't use the spirit summons just by choice through most of the playthrough. Um, this fight, I did go in because I assumed it was intended for you to summon these guys in for the fight. It just felt right. It felt more thematic. I didn't feel like I was cheating myself out of the boss experience, I guess. That's
no,
just the way my mind works. Spirit summons are fine, but I at least for first playthroughs of these games, I like to 1v1 most of the encounters. This one
yeah,
I felt okay summoning in.
I felt okay summoning as well. I didn't use my summon, but I did use the summons that were on the ground.
Yeah, those ones. Yeah.
Um, I thought it was definitely a good idea. Um, and some of the moves felt a little bit um frustrating and difficult to dodge at times. It's a very big boss,
It
and
is.
um, it's a very aggro boss as well. And that's something that I kind of struggle with sometimes is dodging through an attack rather than dodging away from it. And Radon's one of those areas. It may have been the first area that I went to in the game where it has an attack that you need to dodge through rather than
I know the attack you're talking
dodge
about
away
too,
from.
where he's running on the horse, like doing like the skating thing, and he does like the big sweep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That one, and then also when the purple orbs
Oh
come
yeah,
out.
the magnet orbs. Yeah.
The orbs come out. He shoots 2 orbs, then he shoots 2 more orbs, and then he does some type of attack on you, and then that attack is one of the ones that you have to dodge through rather than away from because it will hit you. And at the time, I had
You,
no health,
yeah, you
so
were getting one shot by him as well.
it was a one shot on every account. And that was also before that I went to that was pre-buff on magic, and it was also before I chose to do spell sword. So I was just out there with 2 health, with all these gimp spells, and I was just like, why is this hard? And then the whole world opened up when I was introduced to the Moonveil
Moonveil.
Katana, as well as when they buffed some of the magic. I'm in New Game Plus right now with some of these magic spells that are doing way more damage to bosses in New Game Plus than they did in regular New Game when before they buffed them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Have you fought Radon recently post nerf?
yeah, I-
I think they did him dirty. I think he's almost too like I don't want to
yeah.
say too easy, but he's a significant step down from what he was at launch.
Now I didn't play him again in regular New Game. I played him in New Game Plus, and I felt like he was devastatingly easy. And I didn't attribute that to the nerf. I just thought maybe that was because I'm level 150. I've got all the stats that I want. I
Yeah.
went in there and blew up Godric and Morgot like they were just standing still. So I just accounted Radon as the same.
Gotcha. It's fairly significant. I think they did the hitboxes and they reduced his health pool a little bit. So big shame on that one. I felt like he was in a decent spot. I think the hitboxes were a little jank, but oh well. Moving on, let's do a quick speed run on some of the optional remembrances that the game has, because there's quite a
Hmm.
few of them.
Right?
You have the regal ancestor, the stag. Um,
I thought that boss was poop. I'm sorry, but that was like, I went into that thinking, because it's literally almost the same exact arena that you fight Madeir in. I was
yeah,
thinking, fuck yeah, let's go. You're in this like semi secret area, and you just lit all these torches, and now we're fighting the boss. Shit's about to be epic, and it's just a fucking deer running in the sky, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
I was underwhelmed with it as well, especially considering there's there's two of these bosses. There's the lesser ancestor and the regal ancestor. And I think the only difference between the two is the regal one will like go into the ground and teleport away from you.
Right. I
I,
you know, I
I I
mean,
might not have just recognized the moveset just because they're kind of a soft boss as well.
yeah, I mean the boss, I mean they can't all be winners, but
Nah.
I was very underwhelmed with this boss. It it was kind of stupid, to be honest. I didn't get it. Why are
Why
we
is
fighting this big why are we fighting why am I fighting this big deer?
Yeah. It's not really it like from software lore is always hard to follow anyway, but this one felt like more so disconnected than the others. And I understand there's probably a lore piece with the Minotaur people that are around that area with this, but it felt disconnected. I'll agree with you. Plus the boss was underwhelming. Um
Right. And I've always been one that I like lore in a lot of games, but as far as From Software lore goes, I have never enjoyed it. And it's never made a whole lot of sense. And it's just all to me it's always been something that really didn't add to a game for me. I know a lot of people enjoy it, and I know there's some people who have made careers out of explaining to people the lore behind From Software games, especially because it's so hard to understand. But it's just something that I've never personally enjoyed, and I don't think it's something that adds to the game hardly at all. Because it's so confusing. I do think, however, that some of the lore has been better in Elden Ring.
I also like the side quests. They've streamlined the side quests and the NPC quest lines quite a bit, and there's a lot of really good NPCs that I actually like enjoy. None of them feel like a chore to go through their quest lines. They're all interesting in their own way.
Right. I think that's good too, because a lot of quest lines in previous Souls like games has been, you know, hard, even hard to find, not just hard to complete. These are kind of like, you need to go here, they mark shit on your map.
That was the
Um
best update they could have done was marking where NPCs move to.
mhm. That, and that, they tell you where to go, and it's not just like some vague shit that you don't understand. And then that was one thing that I didn't like about a lot of Souls games is, I'd be like, oh, like after I completed the game, it's like there's this awesome sword or there's this awesome spell, and then I'd call you, because you follow the games and the quests and stuff a lot more closely than I do. And I'm like, well, how the hell do I get this? And you're like, oh, well, you have to do this quest line. You have to go get this guy, and it's in like this obscure place. And I'm like, how would I ever stumble upon this casually?
Yeah. Elden
And
Ring also makes it so that you don't get locked out of quests because I know a lot of the times when you would call me, you would have finished the game and you're like, yeah, I want this weapon. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to start a new game plus because once you beat this boss, you're done.
yeah, I think they've made the game more accessible to the casual gamer. And I don't know that I'm necessarily what I would consider a casual gamer. Um, I pretty easily beat Elden Ring. But I'm not a hardcore gamer anymore, so to speak. And like I don't want to necessarily play a game that I have to grind and grind and look and look and look for things. I like when things are very challenging, but I also like when things are readily accessible. And I think that Elden Ring has a very nice balance of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's more appealing to a larger base of players than any, Souls game or Souls like, up to this point.
Agreed. Agreed. Well said indeed. Continuing on the boss train, Estelle, the natural born. This is the big space centipede.
Mm. That was a decent boss. There's two of those,
There's two of
and
them, and with Renala, this is the only other boss I would consider to be a mage boss.
yeah, I don't think that this was a bad boss at all. I would say probably another A tier boss.
Yeah.
Um, the moveset was okay. Some of it's hard to dodge, some of it's not hard to dodge. It's a big boss. Um,
Only thing that was frustrating with me with this boss was it had two different versions of teleport. One, it would
mhm.
just teleport to the opposite end of the arena, and you'd have to chase it down, and it would shoot laser beams at you while you were coming at it. That's fine. The other one is it would teleport like just directly behind you and then grab you, and I always got grabbed by that one.
Yeah. I don't even remember seeing that move. I think I just moonveiled it down.
Yeah,
To be honest with you. But I did think it was a good boss. I
it's
wasn't.
an, the
It didn't
head
give me
being the
that.
weak spot with this boss. I think helps with it too because again, it's a big boss, but having that head to focus on keeps the full boss in perspective.
Yeah, and this was one of the bosses that I would say, albeit not on par, but it was, you know, mirrored, the enjoyment that I got from fighting Midir a little bit.
Yeah,
Same size arenas, similar size boss. Decent move sets, decent difficulty. So, it was. I mean, it's still a far shot from Midir,
yeah.
as a large super boss. I think that is one thing that Elden Ring does struggle with a little bit is your extremely large bosses aren't always good bosses.
Yeah. And I'm
And
hoping,
their smaller bosses seem to be, great. But their larger bosses have seem to struggle a little bit, like Elden Beast, a lot of the dragons. Now I did enjoy Rykard a lot.
Rykard was the next one I was wanting to talk about. We've already talked about the two uh, dragons, the Lich Dragon and the King Dragon. So I was going to
Mhm.
skip those, but Rykard, I'm really interested on your take on this one because Rykard follows the From Software trend of having one boss with a gimmick weapon in its arena that you have to use that weapon to fight. How do you think Rykard compares to Demon Souls, Storm King, and Dark Souls 3's Yorm?
Well, first of all, I will start off by saying that Demon Souls sucks, but I will say that the Storm King was a good boss. You know,
It's one of my favorite bosses of Demon Souls, just from a spectacle perspective. Talking about specifically the PS5 version because I've never played the PS3 version. Um, the arena, the just overall tone of that fight. The boss isn't hard, but it's just a fun thing to watch happen.
yeah, it's one of the only times that I actually had fun playing Demon Souls. So I will say that I enjoyed that boss. I also enjoyed Yorm, but what I will say is that I enjoyed Rykard more than both of those for sure. I thought it was a great boss. I loved that I didn't have to try to equip the weapon while the boss beat on me.
Yeah, it lets you walk
That
up, grab the weapon, equip the weapon, and then you can go into the boss fight.
it's very obvious. Like this weapon is sticking out of the ground, and it has something like serpent something or other, and I'm like, well, looks like I'm going to fight a snake, and I need to use this. So I thought it was great, and it definitely has a limited move set. I do like that
Especially
there's
in phase one.
I do like that there's two phases. But I mean, if you look back at the move sets with other bosses of this type, like look how many moves Yorm has. What, he has like 3 moves or something, and like the Storm King just flies around and shoots crap at you. Like, um, I think that maybe Rykard doesn't have a move set in phase one like a lot of the bosses do, where they have like 9,000 different variations on moves. But I think that the pacing of the phase one to phase two was nice. I thought phase one was difficult enough that when I beat phase one, I was like, hell yeah, I finally beat this thing. I mean, albeit I was there a little too early.
Yeah.
But when I got to phase two, I was just like, wow, this is really something. Especially the first time you play against a boss like this, you kind of are a little standoffish just to feel him out, and that's not something that you can really do with Rykard. You have to be like balls to the wall, slamming his ass, and if you do that, then you're sure to win. But if you're that standoffish, feeling the boss out playthrough, then you've got there's a lot going on in that phase two. There's those skulls flying in the air.
That
There's the
phase two
lava.
is the only thing I can say is epic. It takes the spectacle from the Storm King fight and the difficulty from the Yorm fight, and I think combines it in a good way. Like, I wouldn't say he's necessarily a difficult boss once you kind of get a feel for what's going on, like most gimmick bosses, but boy, is there a lot going on in that phase too, and it's both fun to watch and fun to interact with.
Yeah, the only thing I will say about Volcano Manor as a whole is I felt like it was my favorite area.
Okay,
And I think
interesting.
once you get to the Godskin Noble and beat the Godskin Noble, I didn't feel like there was enough content between Godskin Noble and Rykard, because you just get into like the castle area, like the upper tier of levels, on this seemingly epic area, and it's like you go through a couple rooms and then you go into a transporter and there's Rykard. I think they could have added a little more to that area, because I thought Volcano Manor was great.
It was really cool. It was a nice, like, a lot of verticality with that area. The lava pits down below, and then like that mid tier with the buildings. There's some rooftops you can jump around on. A few different lifts that go up to different levels. Good enemy variation all throughout. Like, it's a really solid area, and I don't typically enjoy the volcano style areas. Most people hate water temples. I really don't much care for fire temples.
I didn't
Yeah,
care. I don't care for fire temples either, and that's something that was surprising to me, was that I liked this one as much. My only criticism, I will say, is that I didn't like that it was the whole area was behind an invisible wall. First of all, because a lot of players, I feel like, are going to miss it. I think you even missed it the first time you were there.
there is,
And
but that's not the intended way of getting into the dungeon. The intended way is to talk to the lady and kill all the people that she wants you to kill, and then she gives you a key to the rest of the manor. That's the intended route.
mm,
And then
okay,
there's two optional routes. One, the invisible wall, and two is the maiden that you can get taken by at the academy, you can drop off of the ledge right where the maiden dumps you, and you can actually get into the main part of the
Yeah,
dungeon
see,
there.
I think that should honestly be nerfed or changed. I don't think because you skip the first part of
Oh yeah,
the
you skip the
dungeon.
entire and you skip all of the interior area.
Yeah, and that also was some of the best areas, in the whole Volcano Manor. And yeah, I don't like that. I mean, it's cool for the speed run. It makes a what could very possibly be, a long and boring speed run. It definitely adds to the entertainment value that you can just drop down there and already be in toward the end of Volcano Manor. But I didn't like that, so early in the game you can just jump down there. Like realistically, you could easily be there in like a casual player in like 20 minutes if you really wanted to.
Or even a non-casual player, if you're just rushing through there, like you can just instantly go there. If you know where the key to the academy is, just go straight past Stormvale Castle. You could get there without having to fight a single thing
Right.
if you go that route.
Hmm. So yeah,
Cool.
that's something that I like, but at the same time it is rough because like a lot of people, I did stumble into Volcano Manor way too early. And I did it by accident because I was exploring outside of the academy and got eaten by one of those rolling guys. And all of a sudden, I'm in Volcano Manor, and yeah, I'm in way over my head. But I'm
Yeah.
too stubborn to leave. So I end up at the end of it fighting Godskin Noble at low levels and get frustrated.
Before we bring it back to the bosses, I do want to make one comparison. So you say you don't like the Volcano Manor skip in that regard. Um, did you have an issue in Bloodborne with the Yarogul skip where you do the charged attack through the pillar and it lets you skip the majority of that level?
I thought that was good for the speed run. Um, that's the difference between those two is, I think that the Volcano Manor skip is absolutely intended, whereas
That
um,
one's obviously a glitch. You're
yeah,
glitching
the
through
the
the
Yaragul
environment.
skip is a glitch, and because if you do it wrong, you die.
Right.
If you don't, because you're in a glitched area. I mean, I think it's cool,
And you do
but
think the Volcano Manor, the jump down, you think that's, well, obviously it's intended because if they wanted you to die, they would have made the drop a little bit longer.
yeah, I mean, I don't have a huge problem with it, especially with the entertainment value and the speed run and all that, because I'm an avid speed run watcher, as you know, and yeah, I think it's the coolest thing ever to watch some of these people beat these games in a matter of either minutes or a couple hours.
Yeah.
But as far as looking at it from a perspective of a lot of players, a large player base rather than just this bottom, or I mean, I guess top 0.001% of amazing players. It could raise an issue.
True. Let's finish off the side bosses with the two quote unquote like major super bosses. Rykard's also in that super boss category, but he's being a gimmick boss. Difficulty may vary. Millennia and Moog. Who do you want to start with?
Let's go with Moog.
Okay. So
I
Moog, first, straight up off the gate, Moog, as of right now, I'm about to do a new game plus run in my free time, and I'm going to kind of feel everything out in that run. As of right now, Moog is my hardest boss in the game. Moog is the roadblock that I had the most trouble with. I think I spent 3 hours fighting Moog before I was actually able to beat him. in comparison, it only took me about an hour to beat Melania.
Right. I honestly did not struggle with Moog. Uh, I'm pretty sure I beat Moog after Melania, but I just found the majority of his moveset easy to dodge. And I don't know why. Sometimes you just run into a boss that you feel like the boss can't hit you. And that's really how I felt with the majority of his moves. I I like and I don't like his gimmick. Um
You're talking about the
I
phase 2 transition,
Yeah, the
specifically.
transition, because the first time it happened, which was the very first time that I played him, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, do I need to hide behind something? I'm like running and to hide behind something, and I'm still getting hit by it, and I'm like, what? And then the second time I did it, I just healed through it, and then I think I beat him probably the third or fourth time I played him, and I was like, I like the boss. I like his move set. It felt good fighting him, but like I said, I can't decide whether I like or dislike that gimmick. I don't like the fact that you have to use something in the flask in order to block it, because that's like how's somebody going to know that?
Yeah, and the fact that it's not like anywhere in the immediate area too. It's off of a invader in the overworld, that you get it off of. And if you go in and read the item description, it tells you what you use it for. So, but if you never ran into that invader or check the item description, you wouldn't know. You would
Yeah,
just have to heal through it.
that goes back to that From Software, way of you know having sometimes NPCs, sometimes items that you don't know about, or you don't know how to get. That thing that irritates a lot of not just your super casual gamers, but everybody that's not like super polished on every single item in the game. um like some, even the people like you who really follow everything in the game, like, may not even know about that.
Yeah.
So I didn't I like the boss a lot, and I think it's cool that they had a gimmick like that. But I also really didn't like that there was a way to block it, and I also don't like that there's a way to not block it. You know, you know what I mean? It
It's either
in this.
it's a you do it or you suffer situation, and you would never know that you need to go out of the arena, because I did the same thing that you did. I tried to hide behind something. I tried to time it so that I dodge rolled whenever he like thrust his spear into the air to try to like dodge the timing on it.
Mhm. Yeah, that's and also I feel like this game, you know, really does encourage a lot of the challenge runs and stuff, but I feel like this game is the one game that really shits on no hit runners. And
I
I don't know if no hit runners just irritate the fuck out of Miyazaki or something, but
he's taken every he the happy hob has made a personal vendetta. The god runs were the last straw, and he was like, after this shit, never again.
yeah, I really feel like this game really shits on no hit runners, and there's just too many things that are just not really that dodgeable. Um, and that thing of Moogs is, just the icing on the cake. To be honest with you.
With the no hit runs, they're gonna have to allow the hits for that, because even if you do drink the flask that blocks the bleed, you still take damage from it. So if the all bosses no hit run exists, I'm not even sure if it's possible in this game personally. Um,
Yeah.
that's gonna have to be allowed hits. Is those three?
I mean, unless there's something we don't know yet.
Yeah, or they're able to burst them The only way I could see them doing it is them being able to find a way to burst a boss through the second phase before he's able to do it.
You mean like some type of one shot build or something?
Yeah, like get him to the cusp of the phase transition and then stagger him into a one shot.
Yeah, and then just blow him to smithereens.
Yeah, that would be the only way. Back to his regular move set though. It's it's one of those things where you and I go back and forth on what bosses we struggle with. The timing of his attacks just got me super bad. And it's two attacks in particular. It's the one where he swipes the claw across, and then after a delay, it explodes. I always reacted to the claw swipe, and then the explosion got me.
See, and I think that's because I'm more of a roll away person, and you're more of a roll through or to the side person. And I've watched people fight Moog as well as fighting him myself, and that swipe that explodes, if you don't roll away from it, pretty much you get hit by it.
Yeah. And then the other attack is the big overhead slam that he does. It just takes forever. That slam takes like a full half a second longer than I expected to, and I always roll ahead of time. And it does like half of your health.
Yeah.
And then on top of
Let me
that,
ask you.
the fire that the blood fire that's all over the arena while he's doing his shit, especially in phase two, it just
Mhm.
chips you down.
Did you fight his the great value version of him in the sewers?
I did after, and it didn't give me any problems.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Um, One little aside before we get into Melania, because I have a feeling you're going to have a quite the conversation on this one. Moog, Margot, and Morgot. They have gimmick items that make the fights easier. Both Moog and Margot have the shackle that you can use to tie them up in the early stages of the fight. So you can
Hmm.
basically get a quarter of the health bar down before the boss is even able to fight you. Do you like mechanics like that, or
No, especially this game. I
because
don't like
the only other game that From Software had that had something like this was the Music Box with Father G. It's very similar to the Music Box with Father G.
the music box with Father G. I liked.
Is it because it was
Um,
more lore based, or because like what did you like about that you don't like about the Shackle?
I did like, actually, as surprising as this may be for you to hear, is I did do like the lore aspect of Bloodborne, and especially that area. I think the lore, as far as From Software games goes, is the best in Bloodborne.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
and I liked the music box, like the little quest. Like, it wasn't difficult to find, and it was pretty clear what you did with it. And it was something that a casual player could figure out pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it also didn't completely gimp the boss. You know,
Because
I
as
just
soon as
like
you hit Father G, like you play the music box, and as soon as you hit him once, he's back to fighting.
right, right. I thought Father G is one of the best bosses in the Soul series.
Agreed.
So, but as far as the shackles goes, I don't care for that necessarily. It's just a way to gimp the boss. And
Yeah, you
also,
saw you saw my reaction to it whenever I used it on Margit. The
yeah,
only time that Margit beat me was because I basically like ended the fight myself because I didn't like how that felt. It felt bad.
yeah, and I also really dislike that the summons in Elden Ring, and I think that it's just an easy way, especially with the mimic, is such an easy way to just blow up a boss. Like, it makes every boss literally trivial, and I dislike it a lot. And that's something some of the speedrunners have been talking about, is that if they nerf some of these glitch things that they're using, it's literally going to be summoning a mimic and using whatever that bleed
The rivers of
spell
blood.
is.
Oh no,
Yeah,
seppuku.
the bleed spell that you cast. I forget what it is.
The flies?
Yeah, the flies, and they've said that they'll be using that and compounding it with the mimic, and it turns into like a casino run because it's like, when's the mimic going
When's
to
the mimic
use
gonna
that?
cast flies?
Yeah, and it's just going to be severely boring for everybody to watch. But that's going to be the best way to do it if there's no other glitched weapons.
Interesting. Okay. I don't mind the summons. I think the summons, in my opinion, it's another game mechanic. It's entirely optional to use. There's plenty of people out there that are very vocal that they don't like the summons, but I'm okay with them existing for other people to use. Whether I use them or not is neither here nor there. I don't mind them. Other people using the summons doesn't invalidate my experience with the game. And if that's the way that they want to play the game and that's the way that they enjoy it, more power to them. It doesn't bother me too much personally. And I honestly like the summons in the fact that if I wanted to farm a build out real quick in like a couple hours, I have that backup so that I don't actually have to like try like too desperately hard to get a build figured out.
I'll tell you, my personal feelings on the summons is definitely a negative one. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people do have a negative feeling about summons is because of the overall experience in From Software games as a whole. Because I mean, think of it this way: you're talking to your group of gaming friends, as a lot of people do, discussing a game like this, and the game's really difficult, and you say, oh, I beat this boss or I beat that boss, and then it's like it gives you that sense of satisfaction of being able to defeat something that your friends can't, or your you know group of gaming people can't. And then it comes back to that then now there's a summon, and everybody can kill every boss easily if they use the summon. And I think that takes away some of the magic that From Software games have, where only certain people can really excel at them. It makes it more of like an anybody can beat this type game, rather than you know I don't want to say it's like an elitist type thing, but it feels good when you're able to do things that other people can't. And I really enjoyed that I was able to beat this game pretty easily. And a lot of the people I know that play video games, all the people I know that have PS5s have expressed that they think the game's ridiculously hard and that it's crazy I was able to beat it as easily as I was.
Yeah. I get entirely what you're saying. And coming off as non elitist as possible with it, I think you made a good point on it. It's something that the other games didn't have to deal with outside of like the only really other mechanic similar to this was just summoning in for co-op.
Right.
This is like PvE co-op basically. It's in that same ballpark. Again, me personally, I don't have a problem with it. I understand where it can create a rift in the community because the Souls community is tight because we've all experienced the same thing. This makes it so that there's more caveats to beating Elden Ring than there have been any other game, and not everybody's experience is going to be the same. And you could pretty well say that with all the other From Software games that everybody's experience was comparable. Whether that's a bad thing or not, I don't know. Like I said, difficulty sliders have existed in other games, and it's never really been that big of a problem. But also, other games aren't really hyped up by their difficulties, so it's
Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
there's been, there's plenty of summons in other games, but it's not. There's never been a time when it's it's pick your own summon,
Yeah,
and it's always like a preset. guy that can help you a little bit, but he's not going to do it for you. Whereas this game has some summons that are so OP that they make the boss, almost any boss, trivial.
Yeah, pre-nerf Mimic and I think Black Knife Tish are two of the summons that can solo enemy, like solo bosses.
I mean, I've heard that post nerf Mimic is still, you know,
Depending on the build, able
ridiculous.
to. Okay. Bringing it back into the bosses. Millennia, go.
Good
Say your piece.
good boss. Um, I really dislike that one move that we've spoke about.
The waterfowl dance.
The flurry.
Yeah.
Um, I have seen a way that there is to dodge it pretty easily. You when you see it, you run and then you roll and then you roll again and then you roll through it for the third. I will say that it's too difficult to dodge, especially if you're close, if you're fighting close combat. And I don't like the fact that it feels like you need to sit there and fight the boss according to when she's going to do one move. Like especially if it's like one of your favorite bosses, and that's what it's set up to be. Like the lore says that Melania was, she defeated every other, challenger. I believe there's
Yeah,
one.
she's undefeated.
Yeah, like she defeated Godric or somebody.
She fought Radon. She's the reason Radon's like a zombified like berserker in the desert. She liquidated his brain with the scarlet rot. She's supposed to be this game's nameless king.
Yeah, Nameless, even more epic than Nameless King, because I do think that she's better than Nameless King, believe it or not.
Okay.
I think she's set up to be like Maria on steroids.
Okay.
Combine like Maria, like if Maria and Gale had a baby,
And
I think that's
that
kind of
baby
what.
had poison. Yeah.
Yep, that's kind of what she's set up to be, and I really just still feel like that move takes away from the fight.
That's fair. During my hour of fighting her, I was able to get that move down to about a 50% dodge rate for most of it. I think I only purely dodged it twice, like no damage dodged it. Usually it would like clip me on a few attempts that I did get through it without it one-shotting me. But anytime she did it and I was like mid-attack, I just put the controller down.
Yeah, it was very frustrating, especially when I was doing really well, and then all of a sudden, there's that move, and it's like, and also there's that RNG aspect again. It's like I'm
Yeah.
doing great, and then she throws that move out, and I die, and she has it in both phases. I also, I don't feel like there's enough variation between phase one and phase two.
I
You know?
disagree on that one. I feel like she does similar to Maria. It's the same, but it's different. Like the combos are the same. Her aggression level is through the roof in phase two. That's the first thing. In phase one, she'll do her combo and then she'll kind of like jump back and like man walk at you. In
Mhm.
phase two, she's dead sprint at you the entire time. She does not stop. Um, the combos, while very similar, there's some slight variation to them, and I think her wings add to it, not necessarily in like because the wings don't attack or anything. She uses them for like some for jumping moves, but the wings inhibit your ability to read her. I think they designed her move sets in phase two so that those wings sweep in front of her so that you don't quite see what's going to be coming out next. It gives a little bit more of a like you can still recognize it, but it makes it harder to. And then she
Let me ask
has
you
new.
this:
Go ahead.
which phase did you feel like was harder?
One.
Same.
Phase one is definitely harder.
And that's why.
I don't know specifically why. I feel like she's squishier in phase two. And I think from like a thematic standpoint and a lore standpoint, I do believe she has less health in phase two than what she does in phase one. And I know that's not just saying that because she starts phase two with 75% for health.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. Why does she start phase two with 75% health?
I'm just assuming that it's so that she can heal it back up through combat because every one of her attacks heals her.
I mean,
I'm
I don't. I thought that was incredibly stupid to start
yeah,
phase two, and I, you know, phase two just felt weak compared to phase one. Like phase one, all things considered, minus the shortcomings of that one move, which you know is incredibly hard to dodge. Phase one was pretty damn good. Like I've said to you many times, it's a great boss. It's just that one move I have a problem with. Whereas phase two, it's kind of like, it almost becomes like, it almost goes from like an S tier boss down to an A tier boss, or it takes a boss that's incredibly epic down a little bit, and I don't think that was their intention, but I think that's the way
no.
it turned out.
So thinking retrospectively back on it, phase one, I think it's harder because there is more downtime in phase one, and it kind of forces you to approach her instead of her to approach you. And on that approach, she can do a lot of different things. She could either just eat the attack that you're gonna come at her with, or while you're like going at her with an attack, she can start one up of her own and it can kind of throw a wrench into your thing. With phase two, it's all you reacting and punishing. There's not really any chance for you to play the primary aggressor. And I think that's in some circumstances, if you cannot get overwhelmed, does make the boss easier.
Yeah, I mean, all things considered, phase two is easier, and there's a decent amount of moves in phase one that are hard to dodge. Whereas I didn't feel anything in phase two was hard to dodge, minus the one move, the waterfowl dance, as you call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That was the only move in phase two that's hard to dodge.
I think in phase two also out of her base moves, the only move that I was consistently having trouble with was anytime I would move away from her, she does that like quick dash forward with the 1-2 flurry. That one
Hmm.
got me almost every time. But outside of that move, and that was in both phases. Phase two, all of her combos tend to end with a slam of some type. She tends to jump up in the air and slam the ground, and she tends to be like she has more punishable opportunities in phase two. Not just at the end of her combos either, but she adds two more super like finisher moves to her move set. The thing where she jumps up in the air, turns into the big flower, and like launches at you.
Hmm.
That gives you a full like 5 seconds to reset yourself, and then as she's standing back up, you can punish. And then the
Yeah.
other one where she jumps up into the air and sends like the Valkyrie spirits down to attack you.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like those were easy to dodge and easy to punish, and I didn't feel like anything in phase one was necessarily easy to punish. Albeit a couple things were easy to dodge, but the majority of her attacks were like remotely difficult to dodge and definitely difficult to punish in phase one, whereas it seemed everything was easy to dodge and easy to punish in phase two.
One thing I like about her though is she's one of the few bosses in the game you can actually stagger, like not like posture break where you can go in for a visceral, but like your individual attacks will actually flinch the boss. I
Hmm.
like that. I I like bosses like that where you can actually like she'll jump out of the way so you can't like stun lock her infinitely, but I do like that it kind of gives you a moment to be an aggressor for however long the boss lets you before it jumps away.
I do like that as well, and overall, I think that she's a good boss. I don't know that I would put her as an S tier boss, though. I think that I would also put her as an A tier, just because some of the shortcomings.
That's
Um,
that's fair. Moving up into the mainline bosses, let's try to wrap this up. We have Morgot, Malekith, Godfrey, and then the finale. Fire Giant's in there as well. So let's start with Morgot. Um, it's
Good boss.
It's Margit on steroids, which
I
is
thought it was. I thought it was a great boss. A lot of good moves. A lot of things that are hard to dodge. Good damage. Good boss. I don't have a complaint with that one, to be honest with you. I mean, it's not overly exceptional, but it's a good, like, hey, you've reached the pseudo halfway point. Maybe 3/4 point, whatever you want to consider it. Um,
I do feel like the end
Here's
of the game is pretty condensed.
yeah, it's like, here's a little roadblock for you, a good boss, and yeah, I enjoyed Morgot.
I did too. He gave me a little bit of issue. I'm not even gonna lie to you. There's a lot of variability in that move set that kind of similar to Moog. I just had trouble like getting the timings on, but
Hmm.
overall, very very solid. Fire Giant. I enjoyed this boss. I don't think it's a particularly good boss, but I had fun fighting him.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad boss. It's it's
It's
kind of
one
like,
of the two main or one of the two remembrance bosses that you can fight on horseback. The other one being Radon.
I thought that was cool, the horseback aspect. I also thought it was cool that it was kind of like a copy of the boss, like the main boss in, what is it, Ghosts and Goblins? The guy with the mouth on his
Yeah,
stomach.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're
I
talking
thought
about. Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. And the only thing I don't like is, I kind of felt like that ice area is huge, and it's just like, you literally can just ride up there and fight that thing and be done with it. And I think there should have been more to the ice area, rather than just having that boss up there.
I'll agree with that. I also think this boss suffers from the boss is too big and you just kind of ride underneath of him and smack a leg. You don't really get to
Mhm.
enjoy like the spectacle of the fight.
I would agree with that as well. That always ends up taking a little bit away from a boss.
Yeah. It and the Godskin duo, if we wanted to touch on the Godskin duo real quick. After
Oh,
struggling with Morgot for probably about 30 to 45 minutes, I ended up one-shotting both of those bosses. And I know a
did
lot
you
of people
fight?
struggle with the Godskin duo.
Did you fight the skinny Godskin guy
Yeah, I fought
by
both of them
himself?
prior. I fought both of them prior to the duo fight. Yeah,
Okay. Did you fight the one that is in the tower in Kaled, in the Kaled Tower?
no, I fought the one that was in Windmill Village.
Okay, so did you visit the Divine Tower of Kaled?
No,
Okay, so that's a really good area that you need to visit. And there in the basement, like the actual final boss of it, is the I forget what the smaller one's name is, the
the
Godskin,
Apostle
Godskin Apostle, yeah. And then it's a
Noble is the big
really
one.
it's a really buffed up version of him,
Okay,
and it's a lot tougher version than you'll face at the windmills. And
and a tougher version than what I'm assuming is in the duo fight.
yeah, yeah, it is. And at least I think so. Although, once again, I was pretty underleveled when I ended up fighting it the first time, because that was before I got the moon veil. But it was a good fight, and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the Godskin duo. I also didn't struggle. at all with that fight. I don't think I one shot it, but I think I killed it second or third time, maybe fourth at maximum. And I think it was a really good fight.
Yeah.
It was a good duo fight. Almost as good as the
Do you think it's
two.
Ornstein and Smo worthy?
I don't.
Okay, but maybe like Throne Watcher and Defender in Dark Souls 2.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That or what's the knight with the big shield that you had a little bit of trouble with?
Knight with the Crucible Knights.
Yeah, the Crucible Knight Duo is probably the most difficult duo fight you'll encounter in Elden Ring, and I thought that one was a little bit better than the Godskin Duo, but it was still a good fight. Although I didn't find it overly difficult. Everyone hyped it up like it was going to be so hard, and I'll be honest with you, it was kind of easy.
Yeah, I think the easiest aspect of it was once you kill one, and it doesn't matter which one you kill, you can kind of just go back and forth like for the rest of the fight because they both share a health bar and they keep resummoning each other. But once one
Yeah,
is
that
out of the
that was
way, you're
something.
just kind of stuck. Okay, well I killed this one. Now I can 1v1 this one. Well, he's dead. Gotta wait for the next one to summon back in. Oh, he's
You know,
dead
I'll
now.
I'll be honest with you. I think that was a ball drop by From, and I think they should have
2 health
either
bars and just called it.
2 health bars and called it would have been great. Or if they're going to share a health bar, make it so they each have half the health bar, but that goes back to 2 health bars and called it. That's
Or they could have
exactly what I
done they could have done the Ornstein and Smo route where once one falls, it like super buffs the other one.
That's a great idea as well.
I think I would have
And
preferred that route over because then they could have had like the 1 health bar with both of them sharing it. But as soon as like one of them falls, well, then you would
and
just then it would give you an alternate way of going about it where you could either like, okay, I'm going to burst one of these guys down and then fight the buffed up version of the other, or kind of
uh-huh.
like what you do with the Shadows of Yharnam in Bloodborne, where you kind of chip each one of them down like at the same time and then try to burst them down before the big phase change.
Right. So I feel like they kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that, but I mean it was still all in all a good fight.
Malekith.
Malekith was good too. I thought phase one though was way better than phase two.
I thought phase one was so hard, dude. I enjoyed phase two a lot more. It kind of goes back to Millennia, where I think phase two is easier than phase one, but phase one just wears you the fuck down.
Well, see, the reason I didn't enjoy phase one all that much, the only reason I enjoyed it was because it was challenging. And I thought phase two was cool, but I thought it was too easy. Like, I think I
He
died a
he's
couple of
left
times.
he's left sitting there quite a bit in phase two. Like any of his jump moves, like when he jumps up in the air and sends the waves at you, he always ends it with a slam. And you and I both dodge slams like it's going out of style, and then you
Yeah, and
punish him.
also some of his like swipes in phase two go over your head.
Yeah, if you're
That you
right
don't you
underneath of him, he has trouble hitting you.
Yeah, and it was a very epic boss, but it was another one of those situations where you had a very hard phase one, and then once you got to phase two, it was the guy's like a wet blanket.
Yeah. Phase
So
one,
I
though,
thought,
phase one is unreasonably difficult, in my opinion. Like, I didn't struggle with Malekith too terribly much, but phase one was almost difficult to the point of being frustrating, and it goes into that RNG category as well, where
right,
if I tried to be aggressive, sometimes it would work out and he would do the moves that I could dodge fine. Other times I would hit him once and he would jump back and pocket sand me in the face, and there goes half my health.
hmm I thought it was cool, and I honestly, it was one time that I enjoyed a boss being like a difficult bullshit boss for no reason.
Okay.
So phase two, I won't say phase two is bad because it wasn't,
No,
but
I think that they know that phase 2 was going to be. I think people are going to get hit less in phase 2, and that's why every one of his attacks had that burn on it
Hmm.
because they know they needed to make a boss in that phase where each hit counted. And instead
Yeah,
of just doing its like outright damage, which could be frustrating, they put that slow burn effect on each one of his attacks so that if you get hit, you're like, okay, well, my health's whittling down. Do I back off and heal or do I fight through it?
right. And I think that the area as a whole, like that um, crumbling firm Azula or whatever it's
Yeah.
called, was a great area.
Oh, it's very, very good. It's an extremely good like in-game area.
Yeah, and
Aesthetically, the layout of it, there's a lot of different side paths. I enjoyed fighting everything in that area.
yeah, I did as well. And when I first got there, I was a little bit worried because I was like, ugh, this is going to be, the area where the Nameless King is,
Yeah.
the
The Dragon
whatever.
Area.
Yeah, the dragon area. I was like, because I didn't enjoy the dragon area very much at all, and I was like, this is going to be another one of those deals. And like the same with Dark Souls 2, like the dragon area, with all the bridges and stuff. I didn't enjoy that very much. Dark Souls 2,
Yeah.
I was just like, this is going to be another, super annoying area. And it turned out to be the exact opposite. It turned out to be a great area. I had a lot of fun playing it. Um, my biggest criticism would probably be that they had the area that you used the stone sword key on,
Mhm.
and it like led you to like what seemed like a really secret spot, and there was just like almost nothing there.
You're talking about the area with the worm guys?
Well, there was like like a dragon and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, yeah, the dragon because there's two secret areas in that. There's the dragon area, and then there's the one with the worm faces.
It's the area where there's a like it takes you back, and you go back by like the very beginning of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, I know the what you're talking about. Yeah,
So, that was one of the only things that I definitely didn't like about it.
gotcha. And then into the final boss kind of gauntlet that they give you at the end of the game with Godfrey into Radagon into Elden Beast. Starting with Godfrey and his phase 2 Horaloo.
Well, first of all, the first time you fight Godfrey,
Oh, that's right, because you
um,
fight Spirit Godfrey as like a predecessor to Morgot.
yeah, that one was dumb. Uh, Easy, lackluster, almost a pointless boss.
They limited
Um,
his move set so much, which honestly kind of okay with that because it made the actual Godfrey fight feel more fresh. Yeah, I know his basic 3-hit combo because that's all the Spirit Summon did, but
I thought it was dumb to put it in there because it just felt like I
they
was
could
just
have
like,
just left nothing there and it would have been fine.
they could have left nothing there and it would have been fine, and they also could have put something different there. And was it the first or the second time you go to the Capitol when you
It's the
fight
first
you fight the
first
human-sized boss?
mm, are you talking
Mm,
are you talking about the mage dude?
yeah,
That's the second time. Uh the all-knowing or whatever his name is.
yeah, yeah. That guy felt pointless and easy as well. And then
He's more of a lore piece than he is a supposed to be an actual challenge.
right now, I will say that Godfrey the second time was good. I'm not gonna say it was great, but
I
I think that
personally, for me, he's one of my most in like. I probably had more fun fighting him than a majority of the bosses that we've talked about. I just something clicked about that fight, and it's like the Nameless King for me, where the fight just clicks. It has a good rhythm to it. I was in tune with what was going on. It felt like a dance, and I just really, really enjoyed it. Maybe not
Mhm.
necessarily the hardest fight in the world, but it's a very enjoyable fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad. I just something I think about Elden Ring as a whole is I think that there's a lot of good bosses. Like, this game has more A tier bosses than any game in the series. Potentially more good bosses, we spoke about earlier, probably has more good bosses than every other game combined. Now, I do feel like the only area it's lacking is like
Exceptional
bosses,
bosses.
exceptional bosses, like S tier, you know, that good shit. I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
your Gales, your Orphan of Causes, your
hmm
Medirs.
Medirs, and some of these games have a decent amount of them. I mean, you
Honestly,
know,
Sekiro is nothing but bangers on the boss front. Also, like there are a lot of what I would consider S tier bosses in Sekiro. I wish you would pick it up again because I think you would really like it.
yeah, I've honestly never played Sekiro, not even once.
Well, I think you should give it a try after you get your fill of Elden Ring.
I mean, that
Back to
that may be a
back.
while,
Yeah,
because Elden Ring is one of those games that has a lot of replay value, and even there's a lot to experience in the game as a whole. I do think that the boss gauntlet was good. I think that the Godfrey and then the what is it, Hurlu after that was
yeah.
a good boss as well. I think that was a solid double A
Do
bosses.
you think near the end of the game they started their boss design started to go down? Oh, so one of the criticisms I've been seeing online is the last quarter of the game. Basically, after Godskin Duo, bosses just became AoE spammers. Do you think that's the case, and do you think that's a detriment? Because
Um,
I will say Horalu is very much an AoE spam style boss. He either grapples you or he's AoE spamming. But I didn't not enjoy the AoE spam, mainly because you jump a lot of those attacks, and I think the jump dodge is underutilized in Elden Ring.
jump dodge is definitely underutilized in Elden Ring because I beat the game pretty easily and I did not use jump dodge very often. Um, I do think that a lot of the later bosses were did have that issue a little bit. I that's why I say I don't think that there's a lot of bad bosses in the game, but it just comes back to that exceptional boss. I think Elden Beast was a trash final boss, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And I think it has a lot of like stupid moves and a lot of difficult to dodge moves for no reason.
How do you
And
dodge the orb that like follows you around, or do you
uh,
not?
you
Do you just
you
run from it and then hope
you
that the boss doesn't spam something at you that you can't dodge?
I mean, you just kind of shake back and forth. I don't know. It's very difficult to dodge, and like a lot of his move sets are difficult to dodge, and it's just a crappy boss in general. And having it as a final boss to the game that seems like the pinnacle of the series was very disappointing. I'm hoping that
The DLCs pump out something extraordinary.
yeah, I really do because usually Souls games have a good final boss.
Yeah, I think Dark Souls 2 is the only one that dropped the ball on final boss.
They did. They indeed did. And
This feels more the same, only to a more frustrating point because the boss is actually difficult, whereas Nashandra was just far too easy.
yeah, and then the guy in the DLC thing, the tree thing, that one was really stupid as well in Dark Souls 2.
Dark
But
Souls
Dark
2.
Souls 1
Yeah.
had a good final boss. Dark Souls 3 had a good final boss. Bloodborne, your final
Yep.
boss Garamond, I thought was good. Moon Presence was trash, but Garamond was good. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing, like Radon
Honest,
was good.
honestly, Gehrman into Moon Presence is a pretty good comparison. The
Yeah.
difference being once you beat Gehrman, you don't have to fight Gehrman over and over to fight Moon Presence. You can just go in and fight Moon Presence. Whereas this one, it makes you fight Radagon each time to fight the Elden Beast.
I personally think if you're crappy enough to lose to Moon Presence, then you should have to refight.
Gehrman.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I was very disappointed. I mean, you were on the phone with me when I first played Elden Beast, and I was just like ready to shut the game off.
Yeah. And I felt that similar frustration whenever I was fighting. I gave it 5 or so attempts because Radagon was giving me a run for my money. I was not able to consistently beat Radagon to even get to Elden Beast. And after about the fifth attempt of me getting to Elden Beast, I ended up summoning in the jellyfish just in the hopes that it would take the. It's just that orb, man. If it wasn't for that one like slow moving orb, I don't think it would have been that bad. But that move made me real sad. But yeah, I agree. Elden Beast is a major ball drop, especially after how good Radagon is.
Hmm. I would definitely agree, and I don't understand why. I guess maybe I would like it more if I knew the lore, but it's just like this stupid sparkly beast, like, is the
It's
final boss.
an outer god. It's an eldritch creature that is like pulling the puppet strings in the lands between. That's the lore base of it.
It's like this stupid little, sparkly whale thing that, I mean, I just don't get it. It doesn't seem like, there's so many cool bosses and so many cool characters in this thing, and then it's like, oh, this dumbass little, whale thing is what's causing all this issue.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, and I'm hoping that whatever they bring out in the DLCs, From Software's been great with DLCs in the past. I don't think they've dropped the ball on a single DLC out of any of the games,
I don't think so either.
and
You
I don't
know,
think they're going to start here.
yeah, I will say that I do think that the ice DLC in Dark Souls 3 was a little bit boring.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was short. I think that was the only problem with it. Was short, but I think the quality of the area was good, and I think the boss quality was good as well.
Yeah, they were okay. I think Frida was great, but I think that the Grave Tender
Champion Grave Tender, yeah,
was kind of poop.
but it was. I don't think it was intended to be hard just because it was locking the PvP arena behind it, which I'm almost guaranteeing that they're going to be bringing a PvP arena into this game at some point, whether it's through free DLC or through whatever the first DLC is of Elden Ring.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to do something for PvP in this game because it's just not there. And I think the reason is because the game has so much variation. That's the reason why PvP isn't good now, and I don't know if it can be good because it.
Well,
I was thinking about that today. The game has a similar problem to what World of Warcraft has. Like every time that a new expansion or something comes out, they add a new character, and it's like PvP is so unbalanced, but they literally can't balance PvP because not that many people give a shit about it. So, and if
right.
they balance PvP, then they would drastically take away from PvE, which is what everyone cares about in, World of Warcraft and in games like this. So, do they appease like the 2 to 5%, or do they, keep the other 95% happy? And the choice is pretty easy.
Yeah, From Software, um, in the past games, Bloodborne excluded, has done honestly a pretty good job balancing PvE and PvP. But all of those systems were significantly more limited than what Elden Ring is putting on the table. Bloodborne was an anomaly where the PvP was just trash and there was never going to be any fixing it.
Right.
Um, in Elden Ring, I'm concerned, at least at higher levels, is going to be a lot of the same. Similar to a lot of the bosses, and this is like the perfect segue into like where end game content for the game is and stuff is similar to a lot of the bosses. The PvP at like 125 to 150 is
Mhm.
super dudes that one or two shot you if you're PvPing. There's a few builds that are extremely popular, like Bleed is very strong. The Frenzy builds are very strong. Um, they nerfed the Moonveil a little bit, but it's still a force to be reckoned with in PvP. Um,
Mhm.
and there's a very significant amount of people that in the upper level PvP scene, since they give you free spell slots, so you don't have to worry about specking into spell slots. It's a lot of uh, spell spam, especially since invasions are always going to be you're always going to be invading into groups unless somebody's like setting up duels. Um, so it's weird, and I'm concerned that like in game PvP is just never going to be a satisfying experience.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know if it can be. And I hate to say that,
And I
but
think that's fine, honestly, because I wouldn't want them to nerf things or alter things in a way that made the PvE experience lesser, because I feel like this game more so than like Dark Souls 3 really thrives on that PvE experience. Dark Souls 3 PvE is phenomenal, but so is the PvP. And I feel like it's more of a Bloodborne style situation where the PvE is so good that it's not worth even considering ruining that for the PvP.
I think I'd agree. And that was one of the things that I worried about with Bloodborne when it came out, is this game really going to flourish, even though the PvP sucks? And the ultimate answer was yes. The game did great. Despite having absolute poop, PvP, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this leads me into what does sustain the game until the DLC comes out. I know low level. I've been enjoying low level PvP significantly more than I have been upper level PvP. There's a lot less one shot builds in low level PvP. It seems like between 50 and 75 is kind of a sweet spot. I'm running a level 65 spell sword style character
Hmm.
right now that I've been really having fun with. Level 65 with plus 4 weapons,
Right.
like plus 4 sombers.
Hmm.
And it's been a
Yeah.
good time.
Yeah. I think one of the things that sustains the game is replayability. You know, um,
And this game has that in spades.
yeah, it really does. And I don't know that it's not going to be a game that I play all the time, because I've beaten the game. I've messed around a little bit in New Game Plus. Like, I didn't really have a big desire to replay the game like immediately or anything, because there was so much to experience.
Yeah.
But
How
at the
how
same
long
time,
did you have in your first playthrough, by the way?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to say that
I think I was around 85 hours.
yeah, I'm going to say that it was somewhere near that, maybe a little bit less. But it definitely has a lot of replayability. The game's fun. It's cool to look around and do different things, and but it's also something it's like an overwhelming game. There's so much to do, and once you do it all in um the first time around, I've have found it very difficult to want to do it all again in a second playthrough, to be honest with you.
My mindset on it has been after my first playthrough, it felt kind of like a weight lifted because now I can attack the game in more digestible chunks. Because I agree with you, I was very much overwhelmed in a very positive way because it was all very fresh and exciting.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that they have the game portioned out the way it is, where like a good 80% of the game is optional. So
Hmm.
now that I'm familiar with the game, now that I have more of an idea of where things are that I could potentially want, I can now focus down content that matches what I'm going for in a build instead of like just randomly going into things because I want to. I now have like goals like, okay, I want to go into this dungeon to get this sword or to go get this spell from this vendor, like that kind of stuff. It gives me more of a streamlined approach. And while each one of those runs are going to be different based on the needs of that run, um, I still feel that incentive to play through with different characters and different builds.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't positively say that I will, play the game a ton once I finished it. I really enjoyed the game. I may do a level 1 run or something of the sort, some type of challenge run, but I don't really have a desire to, make another character or even necessarily continue with the current character I have, especially with my current experience in New Game Plus, what little I've been in it. It just felt like the beginning of the game was very easy. Um, I don't think I've died to a single boss yet. And I've fought a lot of the main like remembrance bosses, and it's just been kind of quick and dirty and like no challenge in the second time through. And I don't think that's an issue. I just think that it was great, a great game, and a game doesn't always need to have tons of replayability, in my opinion, to be a
Not
good
a
game.
game this size either.
Yeah, especially like if you remember back when we were younger and stuff, like games didn't have 80, 80 to 100 hours of content. Like even your 3 disc RPGs were like 40-hour games, you know what I mean?
Right.
And people expect so much nowadays from games, like
People expect too
they're
much from games.
like one of the most coveted games of all time, Donkey Kong. Like you could literally, I guess, beat it, kill Donkey Kong in the first like 5 minutes you play the game.
Yeah.
Like it's an arcade game. And I think that a lot of people are expecting um Elden Ring and games nowadays in general to be something like completely insane when they don't need to be.
I agree.
Even if I don't play Elden Ring very much until the DLC comes out, like I'll still absolutely buy the DLC the minute it comes out and play it and probably beat it and then maybe set the game down again. So, and I think that that's a plus to the game, not really a minus.
Yeah, it's a satisfying experience. And you don't feel like you have to milk multiple playthroughs to get that satisfaction.
Right. And I mean, I did play Dark Souls 3 a lot.
But you
You
also
know,
played Dark Souls 3. You did level 1 run all the way through the new game cycles, as well as you were pretty heavy into the PvP scene as well in Dark Souls 3.
yeah, and I think that the PvP is in Dark Souls 3 is like the best PvP of any of the Souls games.
I
And I
wish you would
think
try
that
Dark Souls 2 PvP because it was way better, but I'll let you think Dark Souls 3 is better.
well, I mean the thing is the problem with Dark Souls 2 and the PvP is that Dark Souls 2 is not a fun game to play. um so I mean Dark Souls 2 gets a lot of hate, and the game's not horrible. Demon Souls is horrible. Like I don't know how anybody likes that game. to be honest with you. Um, and I don't know how it scored as high as it did. It was like a must play on Metacritic. And I'm like, when I played it in its entirety, beat the game, like Demon Souls suck. So, but I could speak about how bad Demon Souls, my opinion on Demon Souls all evening.
Well, let's conclude this with a final take. Where does Elden Ring like sit for you? If you wanted to put a number to it, you can, but you don't have to. Um, we've already established that we both feel like this is like the best game that From Software has put out. But where does it stand like overall in your like gaming? Like, does it hit your top 10 or
I would
give me some
say
closing thoughts?
I would say it probably does, especially for the type of game that it is. It's definitely in the top 10. And, because I would have probably said that Dark Souls 3 was in my top 10 before. I mean, I enjoy games, a wide variety of games, everything from World of Warcraft, you know, Zelda, almost every Zelda game that's came out. You know, I enjoy Mario games. I enjoy everything coming down the road. Binding of Isaac, stuff like that. I like everything. And, Elden Ring is definitely the top, you know, even among some of those games. And, I feel like a lot of people feel the same way. I don't feel like that's us being biased because it's, we enjoy From Software games. I think it's just a great game. And it's a game that is up there with Skyrim and all those great games that we love.
I agree. Um, Me personally, I have a very wide range of gaming tastes as well. Resident Evil 4 has always been up there on my list. Recently, Resident Evil Village has crept up in there. Final Fantasy 6 is a big one. I would even go as
Hmm.
far as to say Rainbow Six Siege is in my top 10 games of all time just because it's a multiplayer game that I consistently come back to over and over. Um,
Right.
then yeah, I would say Elden Ring's securely in my top 10 with Bloodborne. I think those are my two FromSoft games that like hold a very special place to me. Whether it's better than Bloodborne in my eyes, it's hard to say. I think as a
Right.
more condensed experience, I think I enjoy Bloodborne more. But
Hmm.
is Elden Ring necessarily like a worse game? No. I would argue to say Elden Ring is a better game than Bloodborne. I just personally enjoy Bloodborne more. But
Yeah.
it's very close. I'm going to need more time in Elden Ring to confirm that one way or the other, but they're right up there with each other.
Yeah, I would agree. I like Bloodborne. It's just not my favorite game. I do think that there's a lot to Bloodborne, or not Bloodborne, but Elden Ring. And when there's so much content, it not every single piece of it can be amazing. And the fact is, as far as games go, there's a lot more good things in Elden Ring than there are bad things, and that's
Significantly
that's
more.
that's tough to do. It really is. So, I guess in some final thoughts is that the game is it's going to be one of the top games, especially in the series, for a long time, and I don't feel like anything's going to match it.
Game of
You
the year
know.
easy.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people talking about that, and I think that's definitely going to be game of the year. A lot of people are saying that the only thing that might match it is God of War Ragnarok.
Oh, that does come out this year, doesn't it? Because I know they pushed uh Zelda, the next Zelda game, to next year. So
Oh, of course they did.
Yeah, because I have a feeling the Zelda game like would have been a competitor for this.
Oh yeah.
Breath of the
You
Wild
know,
too.
especially because I think that any problems that Breath of the Wild had, they're going to fix in Breath of the Wild too. So,
I'm curious to
but
see if Nintendo takes any notes from Elden Ring and integrates them into the Breath of the Wild open world, because Elden Ring definitely took some notes from Breath of the Wild one and improved upon those. So I'm excited to see like the open world game competition going back and forth, where everybody's like taking the good pieces of each other's games and like improving the experience overall. I think it's really exciting.
yeah, I think if I had one thing to say about my hopes for Breath of the Wild 2 is that the open world stuff was incredible and the little dungeons were incredible, but the main content in Breath of the Wild wasn't good. Like
The
the
beasts.
the main castles, it was all exactly the same. And I feel like that's one area that Elden Ring really tops Breath of the Wild, is that its main areas are awesome. If anything in the game, which I don't think anything in the game is lackluster at all, but if anything I had to pick and say anything was weak, it would be the side dungeons.
That's fair. And there's so many of them, it's understandable.
Yeah, it's really hard to make everything, every single one amazing. The game wouldn't have came out until 2025, if they had tried to make every single piece of it, as good as they made the main game.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking. I'm glad we had this conversation. We'll have to do this again sometime in the future.
For sure. Glad to be here, man. Anytime.
Alrighty. Y'all have a good night. Much love.